there, everybody. It's Kamal Fernandez from Kamal Fernandez Dog Training with my very good friend Kathy Santo from America. Touching base and doing this little conversation, which we haven't spoken for ages, as we're just having a quick conflab before we start this conversation. It feels like we haven't spoken for ages, whereas we're via Messenger, but we haven't actually spoken for some time, which is very unusual. Nonetheless, I thought it'd be great to have this conversation with Kathy about puppy struggles that we both have had with our puppies, which are obviously we've both vented to each other about our respective puppies, wondering where our little golden child has gone. But nonetheless, it is normal, which is what we both know. But sometimes in the midst of the issue, it's sometimes a bit of a struggle. How's things, Kathy? First and foremost, how you've been?
I've been great.
Good.
Imagine that our countries are in the same state of the masks and all that sort of stuff. So, we stay in a little happy dog training bubble, and we're pushing on with it.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Yeah, we're similar sort of stuff. It's all a little bit, up and down, but you and I have the similar mindset of trying to be positive and upbeat about these things and looking for, making lemonade out of lemons, I should say, I think is the best way in which both of our mindsets are very much about. I think that, that's something that will definitely help you when it comes to dog training and dog ownership, having a positive attitude to things and looking at having a can-do attitude. So that has served me well in this current climate. So we've obviously discussed. Sorry, go on.
That's how we are with dog training too,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's because this is the conversation today, and that might help in real life as well as in dog training.
Absolutely, yeah. So Kathy has her golden retriever puppy Ray, who's amazing, or has been amazing up until late, in which lately she's gone a little bit more teenagery, hasn't she? Should we say it the best?
She has become a teenager, yes, and it's funny because, we both have students, and my students are primarily pet people, and you call them about it, and you tell them about that, you roadmap it for them, this is going to happen, and we're foundationally doing things, right? Then it happens to you, and you're like...
the world falls apart. Yeah.
Why is it, I deal with this all day, why doesn't my dog know I'm Kathy Santo? Do this.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit of what's been happening with her then, that is the little horns that have developed with her, that and the struggles that you've had.
Well, it would be fairly typical and expected. Collar grab is now something that we don't really love anymore. We like to run from collar grab, and occasionally she's been known to not come when she's been called. And occasionally finds her brothers far more interesting than I am. Even begun to get some, I don't want to go to my crate, so maybe I'm going to run back downstairs. Yep,
typical stuff, and very similar. So certainly with Hottie and with both Hottie and Jungle, my two youngsters, they both have exhibited exactly the same stuff into varying degrees. Certainly with Jungle, it really was the first thing with her was hormones. So hormones triggered some weird stuff with her, and she's got a really lovely temperament, a really, really social, outgoing dog. But she just used to randomly bark at stuff. There would be nothing there. There'd literally be nothing, and she'd just spook bark, which was a clearly indicator that there was some sort of hormonal stuff going on with her. So that was the one big thing that happened, and she did again sign up for the optional recall. She didn't partake in that for a limited period of time. I have to say, she was actually quite minimal in her lack of recall. She came for it relatively quickly, but she definitely post-season she got really, she just lost some of her intensity, which was for her was like, it felt like there was no dog, because she's so intense normally, and the fact that she went a little bit more sullen was quite and to be honest, I just backed off. I thought, you know what, I'm not battling with her. I knew it was hormones, and sure as eggs are eggs, she came in season, and that largely sorted a lot of the stuff out. Hottie's been a little bit more, a bit, because she's younger, considerably younger. It wasn't hormones with her; it was to do with teething. So when she had a really, really hard time of teething, and to the point of where she's got a great appetite. She's an absolute food dog. You could food train her easily, and she went off food. She didn't want to take treats, and then she didn't want to play because it hurt her mouth, and it lasted for a good couple of weeks with her, and to the point of where previously, if I sort of, if I was going to train her and she could tell that I was going to train her, she'd be in like waiting to train. She'd be like, you know, waiting, saying, come on, come on, come on, to the point of where she was like, nah, avoiding the situation, avoiding. So I just again backed off her. And funny enough, she's now starting to, I'd say the last couple of weeks, she's just starting to come through it all. And I think that's a really key thing, to first acknowledge that this is normal stuff that Kathy's puppy is doing, that my puppies are doing. It's normal stuff, and not, I think a lot of people panic about it, don't they? And they think, oh my God, where's my amazing dog gone? Would you say so, Kathy?
I agree. And it's also, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then start linking these things to things that have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's like if I rub my nose,
yeah,
and then I have a headache,
yeah,
I say, oh my God, I rubbed my nose, it gave me a headache.
yeah,
It's not true.
yeah,
It's the way they are, and
yeah,
they could do this earlier or later, especially the hormone part
yeah,
of it. It's just how it happens. And
yeah,
I don't know anybody who's skated through and not had blips like this. It's just normal. If
yeah,
you don't have it, you worry.
yeah,
Because it's going to happen.
yeah. So
Just,
has Ray had a season yet?
No.
No.
Her lineage tends to come in between 12 and 16 months,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
wild and happy.
Yeah.
Like, hey, once maybe.
Yeah.
So we haven't had that happen yet, but I'm relentlessly checking because I want to put all of the weirdness on that. I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, let's do this.
So has she started to settle in her being, or she's still being testing?
No, she's really come back a lot from it.
Mm-hmm.
I notice now she just tests Eric and Ryan.
Okay.
And probably because they allow it.
Yeah.
You know, a frequent sight is them walking through the house going, Ray,
Yeah.
come here, Ray.
Yeah.
Here, a whole cookie. I'm like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you live with people forever. They still
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you literally birth them, Kathy, it makes no bearing on their dog training ability. Didn't he get some of your DNA, your dog training DNA? No.
That's a least probably anybody.
But it's definitely the case that with certainly from about, I'd say generally from about 6 months onward, maybe as Hottie was definitely a bit younger, and it was definitely to do with teething. But normally I'd say from 6 months onward, with both male and female dogs, anticipate that you are going to get some strange, unpredictable, annoying, aggravating behaviour. So typically I think every single dog I've had, maybe bar with the exception of 1 and 2, they've all lost their recall at some point. So they've signed up for the recall. It's optional, part of the package, and that takes, then varying depending on the dog, depends on how long it lasts. Some dogs, it's like, again with Jungle, it was really a relatively short period of time. With the bitches, I'd say it's less. With the males, it's definitely been longer, and it's been a lot more hard work, because the reinforcement that they get from the environment is far more enticing. So it's nice smells, it's other dogs, it's other people possibly. Whereas bitches, in my experience, tend to be whilst they may sign up for the recall as optional class, it tends to move through them quicker. They tend, in my experience, well, certainly the bitches I have, that could just be my experience, but I generally say males, their recall issues last longer and is much more extreme. So every dog I've had, they've lost their recall, definitely. They certainly, most of them have shown some sort of apprehension, aggression, spookiness, nervousness behaviour. And I think that's where classically people that aren't in dog sports or inexperienced dog owners can sometimes scratch a tiny little wound and make it a great big sore by making an issue of something that will probably come, and it will certainly pass if you don't make an issue of it. The classic thing is when female dogs start to have a hormone change. I tend to be quite protective of my dogs when I interact them with other dogs, or allow them to interact with other dogs, I should say, both male and female, and I restrict them meeting, sort of my female dogs meeting adolescent males, because they're going to probably have an adolescent male is going to be intrusive with them. They're going to invade their personal space, which can be the beginning of the dog becoming dog reactive. In the same vein, I don't allow my young adolescent males to run with other young adolescent males, because it can often become almost like a bit of posturing and shoulder barging, and before you know it, you can create dog aggression. And I would say that the majority of dogs that are rehomed or rescued, or in rescues or people get rid of are in adolescence, and very, very typical behavioural issues that can arise. And as I say, if you handle it properly, it can dissipate over time. How about you, Kathy? Any take on that one? Any input?
Yeah, it reminds me of the students who come to me and they've done some research on the internet, which is a terrible place to go if you're looking.
Yeah.
Or you're a medical diagnosis, like stay off the internet. Yeah,
avoid Google.
Exactly. I have a student with an 8-month-old Labradoodle, and the dog spooked when a car went by them a few weeks ago. And what they decided to do was they decided to work on that. So they put the dog every walk, had opportunities 3 or 4 times to have cars go by him to spook him. And they were going to feed him out of it. But it just made it worse because they kept throwing it to. What they really should have done was back off and wait till you notice it's organically a problem multiple times, and then we can talk about it. But it's just like if you were walking with me in a police car and a siren happened and you jumped, and then I took you to the police station and had them turn on all their sirens, like I would now create
a problem.
So, I mean, when my students are going through that, like I just let's teach them things like what I did with Ray. I spent a week doing stupid things. Get in a box, let's do a spin, high five, like silly things that kept her brain going. And they didn't make me feel like, ooh, I can't ruin this because I'm going to use this on a show. So no sits, no doubt, like nothing, just fun stuff. And it came around, and I wasn't aggravated, so it was good.
And I definitely, so when my dogs enter adolescence, I tend to be much more aware of them accessing reinforcement from other places, i.e. thinking about the dogs that I socialise them with, thinking about the interactions they have with people. If they are fearful or apprehensive, I don't want them to be spooked unnecessarily. And as I say, because I'm quite protective, hopefully I can avoid them having any major incidents that will then last them throughout their life. Now, that's great for somebody with experience, but for anybody listening to this that hasn't got that level of experience to be able to read a situation, my advice is to err on the side of caution. If you don't know the dog or you don't know the person, just take a wide berth. It's far better to be a little bit cautious and therefore not create a problem than risking it, gambling it. And, it might work out well, but there's a possibility that it might not. And therefore create an issue that could last your dog's life. And more importantly, create an issue for you as the owner that can resonate with the dog and throughout its life. I mean, the amount of times I see people say they have dogs that are dog reactive and don't like dogs in their space, and it largely comes from them in puberty, or when their dogs are in puberty, having dogs invade their personal space, and the dog becomes defensive, and as a result of that they then become aggressive, or inverted commas reactive as a result of it. So it's something to be proactive about. Oh, hello, you should be in bed. Hang on a second, Kathy.
Well, it reminds me of something my breeder told me 2010 when I got my first puppy from her. She said, expose them to anything, but protect them from everything.
Great advice.
Is really important thing. Right? It's just, you got to look out for your own. You can't assume things. You can't feel like, oh, this has always been good, so I'm going to do it now. I'm going to let the dog play. They've always been good together. But again, when you have a 4-month-old dog, things are different. Like, it's not normal. So you have to be a little more protective.
Absolutely. And I think when I'm rearing my young dogs, I have a little bank of experiences that I try and give them in their early stages of their life. And then once they're into that, that fear period and then adolescence, I tend to I tend to revert back to those. The reason being is that the dogs had a history of reinforcement and positive experiences with those dogs and those people and those environments. So even if they have a negative experience, hopefully, and my hope is that the positives will offset the negatives. So, for example, I mix them with X amount of dogs, and when they enter that challenging period, I revert back and I sort of hibernate them, and they only get to mix with dogs that they've met previously, or are able to continue to meet throughout. Therefore, if they do have a negative experience, I can do damage limitation by having them meet the dog again and do some patch-up work if something goes wrong, or I can hope that they've met the dog before, so there's a positive and they both know each other, so there hopefully won't be a negative experience as a one-off. the thing to accept is that dogs are going to act peculiarly in adolescence and when they're juvenile. Yeah, it's perfectly normal. It's no different to your teenagers out there. You know, when in my past life, that's what I used to work extensively with, kids that were problematic. These kids were not bad kids. They just did silly things or stupid things, or they got into situations that they were beyond their capability as young adults, as it were. Part of growing up is learning to, you know, have self-control and to curb your temper and to, you know, read a situation and avoid it and to pacify or to talk your, you know, to communicate effectively, etc. And that's what we should be doing with our dogs. The same stuff that we do with our kids, we should be doing with our dogs. Think about, and that's a great way that you put it, Kathy, expose them to anything, but protect them from everything. Love that one. It's a really, really good phrase there. So in terms of Ray, was there anything that you did with her proactively? And even Valor, because Valor was really, really challenging when he was adolescent. He got really like butterfly brain and really spooky and odd, didn't he?
Well, actually, yeah, he went through some really odd things, you know, and he has actually not quite two, and he's sort of bounced into another thing right now, and he's getting very intense about my golden Indy, who's 11. Wants to hurt him everywhere, wants to be on his case about things moving, and just him. And Indy's just like, well, just get out of my way, kid. And so because of that, the recall has suffered a bit, and we're working on walking up to him and doing collar grab, doing that. So I feel like every time I'm with my dog, I'm doing collar grab all day long for no reason. I'll just stand up and walk and grab the collar and give him like stew meat. They just got to bring him back. I've also got to have Indy far enough away from him so he can successfully come back to me on a recall. And since almost 2, there's a little bit more of a penalty. Like if you blow me off and you say I'd rather go to Indy and be sharpie to him, then you're going to get timed out. And then I'm probably going to try you to the tether and train Indy in front of you.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, you broke up then the last bit. Yeah, I get. Yeah, absolutely. I think that as they get older, you can be a little more clear about what you want from them. Again, stop at access to reinforcement so the dog doesn't rehearse the inappropriate response, and be proactive in situations and certainly continually work at their self-control, etc., etc. The other thing to do is when they are in that challenging period is to be aware of what your dog finds reinforcing. So the opportunity to engage with the dog is going to be reinforcement.
So what I was thinking of was when you're talking about letting your adolescent dog play with other dogs, I was also thinking, if those are adolescents that your adolescent dog is playing with, you've got to be aware of where they fall in the adolescent world, right?
Absolutely.
What do they go? And sometimes, like with the pet people I train, they don't have friends who know even what they're looking at, just like they don't. So it's hard for them to make a call. In the dog world of competition, people are a little more savvy, so they would know if the friend would know if their dog's going through an issue and we shouldn't do this or we should do less of that. So it's important to know who your dog's friends are and if they're going through struggles as well.
Absolutely. And again, be aware of exposing. Like I say, I don't let my adolescent males mix with other adolescent males because something like a shoulder barge, a sniffing at the ground at the wrong time, a toy, a treat on the ground could very quickly escalate into an issue and start a trigger for subsequent dog-to-dog issues. And I think if you're vigilant and proactive about it, you can avoid your adolescent males rehearsing inappropriate behaviour. The thing to also be mindful of is making sure that you are reinforcing good behaviour. And this is something that people miss out on. So when your dog sees another dog and doesn't react, don't take it for granted. Reinforce the dog. Even if it's just a casual tickle on the ear or a head scratch, make sure that you acknowledge when they are behaving good. Again, same as kids, if they learn to only get your attention when they behave inappropriately, whether it's being, having a tantrum at the supermarket or, getting into a fight with another kid at school, they're going to rehearse that behavior more often. Whereas if you acknowledge when they are behaving well and they're cool, calm and collected, and you reinforce those moments, those are the ones that will grow and develop.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, Ray was going through a thing. We were at this training field and somebody, God forbid, on a bike, pulled up. Actually, it was kind of funny. They drove up on the bike. They got off the bike and maybe 15 feet from me started doing push-ups. And I was like, you have this whole field. Why in God's name are you right next to me doing push-ups? for whatever. And Ray lost her mind,
Yeah.
like flew barking. So I moved away and found a place where she could handle it. And then we did a little more work and play, blah, blah. So about a week later, the same guy comes up, parks his bike, does his push-ups, and she looks at him and kind of gets alert, but then looks back at me.
Yep.
And threw a handful of treats, ran away,
Perfect.
played the tug.
Perfect.
And so it was just catching that moment
Yep.
and remembering. But I think sometimes people don't remember that was a big deal because it happened a week ago.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you've got to champion and have a party for those little successes, and you've got to remember. This is why I put everything in Evernote or a whiteboard. You know me and my whiteboard.
Yeah.
So that it's in the front of my mind.
Yeah.
Because as trainers, we train more than our own dog. We
Yeah.
train lots of dogs.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to have what your challenges are in front of you. So when you have them happen and you get a success,
Yeah.
you're praise the life out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also good reinforcement for the owner and the handler to acknowledge when you've had little, because sometimes adolescents can be challenging and they can be frustrating. You know, this as I said, Hottie was a great example. She was like a little superstar, like genius puppy, and she just went, nah, can't do it anymore. She literally just went, nah, not interested, and just walked off sessions and was disinterested. She wouldn't play, she wouldn't take food. So there was numerous sessions where I just was like, okay, this is going nowhere, cut the camera, there's no point training. And as I said, it was, at that moment, I was like, oh my God, what's happened to our amazing puppy? And it was only because the others in her litter had similar issues with their teeth. One brother in particular had a really, really difficult time teething. That I was like, do you know what? I'm going to back off her. I've got enough dogs to train. I can afford to let her, be. And even if I only had her as my only dog, it is better to leave them alone and not create an issue. And as sure as eggs are eggs, once her mouth settled and the other thing, she was also growing. She was like, her bum was really, really high. Her body was really out of sync. So when I asked her to do simple things like even sit, stand, and down, she was like, no, my head does not compute with that part of my body. And the simplest thing is just to leave them alone. Let them develop, let them be dogs, let them be puppies, let them work the stuff out in their bodies and their heads and their, etc., etc. And you will find with patience and time, it will sort itself out.
And this is something that pet owners don't realize. I tell them this, I must say it 50 times a day. If I, God forbid, today had a baby, and if in 365 days it was a 21-year-old adult, that's growth that your puppy goes through.
Yeah.
So and toddler and teething and preteen, like all of it in a year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So be easy on them. Their mental, hormonal, and physical growth is incredible. And as I say this, I know that probably the next time she has a hormonal moment, I'm messaging you and complaining about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, whilst we can talk about it here without, it is, you have an emotional connection, especially if you have, like, Ray's incredibly talented and she's just like a little superstar. She's been here before. Same with Hottie, same with Jungle, and both of them are amazing. And then for them to start acting out of character, it definitely puts that doubt in your mind. You're like, oh my God, what have I done wrong? Have I upset them? And that, obviously, with experience, you go, okay, take a chill pill, it's fine. But when you are going through it, because you are interconnected with the dog and it's part of your relationship, an extension of a relationship, it's very easy to get disheartened and a little bit like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Rest assured, it will sort itself out. Just, again, think about where the reinforcement is and not allowing your dog to rehearse inappropriate responses, making sure that you're also upping the ante with your reinforcement. Don't ask too much and don't challenge them too much. And also make sure that you acknowledge the little wins along the road, and you should be fine.
This is very similar to obsessing on a crooked sit or a crooked front, right?
Yep.
And you're, the way to fix this is to just go harder on it and do more and more. And then you make it worse. And it was an accidental crooked sit, but now you've made it a hardwired issue.
Yeah.
You'll be fixing that for the next 3 years.
And it's like, if you're, certainly I can remember vividly with Gray and with Hottie, both of them just not being able to down. I'd say down, and both of them have amazingly clean, really, really sharp downs. I'd say down, their front end would go, their back end would be stuck in the air. And they'd be absolutely convinced they would be doing it. And you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. Because if the dog does something totally out of character and is unusual for them, my advice is back off them. Because there's probably some physical change within the dog. Hormones, growth, etc. And the easiest thing is just to don't make it, just do avoidance training. Just avoid it. Avoid the drama and you'll find it will sort itself out.
Yeah, they definitely have the answering machine on. They're not taking calls.
Yeah.
Like have answer, and
Yeah.
you're like, you know what?
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah. You tend to find that I'd say the worst of it happens before a year, and then it improves probably about 12 to 14 months, and then it gets better, and they probably then have a little resurgence later on. And that, in my experience, isn't quite as intense. It's a lot milder, and then generally like post 2 onwards, they tend to settle themselves down and grow into themselves, and that's when maturity tends to occur, and their hormones are settled, etc., etc. So, you know, definitely be patient with your dogs. Don't get disheartened by the journey that is inevitable for all of us, whether you're an experienced dog trainer or a first-time dog owner. It doesn't really matter whether you do dog sports or just domestic dog training. It's all the same stuff.
It absolutely is. We've been there,
Yep.
and you know, that's why you have groups that you're in.
Yeah.
That's why you do online classes and courses and groups.
Absolutely.
Because you want that support. You want somebody to say, look, I've been there, and now it's 4 months out for me, and things are great. So
Yeah.
hang in, got this.
Yeah.
And the support is really important, especially now when people aren't able to get out and be in groups as much. It's good to be online and hanging with people who understand.
Absolutely. So those of you, if you want to check out some of what Kathy's done, it's kathysantodogtraining.com. Is that right? Yep.
That's right.
So you can reach out to Kathy. She has loads of free stuff on her, and she's forever like giving free stuff away and information and advice, etc. Linking with Kathy. I'm currently opening my foundation course, which is how I raise my sports dogs, and my Heelwork course. And if you're interested in either of those, now is the time to sign up, because there is an amazing giveaway or free access to my VIP groups. So my VIP groups are talking about community. That's essentially what they are: community of like-minded people, where you get access to me and coaching and feedback and additional content on those VIP groups. And currently the access is absolutely free for 12 months. So anybody that signs up for the course, for the for the foundation course or the Heelwork course, will get access to the VIP groups completely free. And previously that's something that would be an additional cost and charge for. And if you sign up for both courses, you get a massive discount. So if you want to take up on that opportunity, sign up now. It's kamalfernandez.co.uk. It's a whole new website with new content, new information, so really excited about that. And if you wanted to find out a bit more, but Kathy, as always, an absolute pleasure chewing the fat with you and shooting the breeze with you, as they say, and having a conversation about dog training.
Yes, and let's not have this long.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh wait, can I say something about your group? I've been in your groups since you started them, and I have to say that when people get into the VIP groups, you really show up. Like, there's a lot of things out there, courses, whether it's dogs or sewing or whatever, and people are like, oh, join the VIP group, and I'll answer your questions. And it's not them. It's other people. And you, just like me, take a lot of pride in raising your students' information. And I've been in there since day one, and it's a huge bonus that you're offering, and I hope people take advantage of it, because
I appreciate you saying that, because, as I say, Kathy and her team have been instrumental in helping me along this whole process. And as I say, they've been way, from beyond day one. It was day zero. It was just an idea in my head. So, it's been fantastic working with them. So, yeah, thank you very much for that. And, yeah, definitely. I think both of us are very similar in that we have that commitment to the people that we work with, and we take it really, really seriously and have a huge amount of passion. So I hope that's what people see and glean from joining those groups.
Agree.
All right, I'm gonna love you and leave you, Kathy. Enjoy the rest of it. You're off to work. Go and teach whatever time it is there. Enjoy your class.
Get Evie in bed.
Yeah, take care. See you later.
Bye.